Should the Clippers trade PG or no? Let's talk about it. We talk about should the Clippers trade Paul George. Now, I want to say this. Now, Paul George, just thinking about his value to the team and what he brought this year, what he brought this season, even in the playoffs along with the regular season, he did bring a little bit of more toughness, a little bit more edginess to his game. I feel like he played a lot of this season, with a chip on his shoulder, as the rest of the Clippers should have. But is Paul George really the second fiddle? Is he really the second key guy that can help them get over the hump if Kawhi Leonard's healthy and he stays? That's the question that a lot of people have, because when you think about playoff P, you think about a player who plays really good in the regular season, has wonderful numbers, but in the postseason, he kind of comes up short. Now, I want to say this, I've been impressed by what Paul George done some playoff games here before they got bounced in the playoffs. I was impressed by some of the things he done. He played with a little bit more, like I said, with an edge to me, and he played with a little bit more determination, like he wanted to win. And I feel like I haven't seen that from Paul George in some years now. And you could just see it in a player when they want to win and when they really want to play their best for their team and play their heart out for their team. And I feel like he played his heart out for the Clippers. He did everything he can do, and it just wasn't good enough, But at the same time, you have to look at the situation in its entirety. Paul George is a value to the Clippers. Now, I will say this. If you're asking me, do I think the Clippers should trade Paul George? I would say no, unless it's for a specific player. Now, me personally, I'm thinking Damian Lillard. If it's a player of that caliber or Damian Lillard specifically, you make the trade, no doubt about it. But at the same time, my thing is, I'm hearing rumors about, teams like the Nuggets, just teams like, that might be interested in Paul George if the Clippers are willing to listen for a trade. But let me tell you, there's no other player that I can think of in the free agency that I would take for Paul George other than Damian Lillard. I mean, unless there was like an Anthony Davis out there on the market, like a James Harden, or maybe even a Russell Westbrook, or, I don't want to say Bradley Beal. I like Bradley Beal, but I'm not the biggest fan of Bradley Beal. But, players like that, what I'm saying, I feel like that's where the Clippers should look if they're even thinking about listening for a trade for Paul George. I mean, first of all, you gave him like $180 million, contract. I think it was last season. He was pretty much locked in regards to, being on the team for like 3 or 4 years, and then you hope Kawhi signs his contract so they could be together. But at the same time, it's really, a tricky situation with this, because when I think about it, I'm not sure if anybody else would fit with the Clippers the way Paul George does. Because, I feel like every superstar in the league can't play with Kawhi Leonard. And I'm not saying there's nothing against Kawhi Leonard. That's my favorite player. I've always said that. But what I'm saying is Kawhi Leonard plays at his own pace and his own game, and he really doesn't like to be disturbed. You know what I'm saying? Like when he plays, he's kind of like a individual player on the floor. Like he likes to get the ball where he likes it. He likes to score how he scores. He dominates the way he dominates. And he's just a different type superstar. He's not flashy. He just more or less get the job done and, turn up the intensity when he needs to when playoff time comes. And I don't think a lot of superstars really can play with Kawhi Leonard just because of the way his game play is. Maybe they can. I'm not going to say they can't, but that's just my opinion. I don't feel like everybody would fit with Kawhi Leonard. And honestly, I kind of feel, at first I didn't think this, but, over time, as I watched Kawhi play with Paul George, they kind of fit each other a little bit, because Paul George is okay with taking the back seat to Kawhi Leonard. He knows he's the better player, and he knows the team goes how Kawhi goes. If Kawhi goes down, he knows he's the guy that they need to look at. He's the guy to be looked to take upon the challenge. And I like that chemistry, and I like that notion that Paul George already has an understanding of who the best player is on the team, and Paul George is okay with that. Paul George does his thing, and he doesn't get criticized. Paul George has his moments where he's a little outlandish on the court in regards to, turnovers and, just taking reckless shots and everything like that. But I feel like Kawhi balances that out sometimes. I feel like some games where Paul George is shooting 9 for 22, well, Kawhi is 16 for 22 shooting from the field. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's a, there's a balance there. I feel like if Kawhi plays with a lot of other superstars, I feel like it might not be a fit there. And I feel like there would just be, I feel like another superstar would be stepping over Kawhi, and Kawhi would be stepping over the other superstar. I just don't feel like Kawhi really works well with other players. I always said Kawhi Leonard, to me, works better by himself. You give him a bunch of good role players and a really, really, really good, solid role player that could be looked at as a second best player on the team. Kawhi works his best then, because Kawhi is just more of an individual solo act type superstar, because he's about getting buckets. He's not about giving you 10 assists and all those type of things, and Paul George is a little bit of everything. He can give you, 5-6 assists, give you 21, 22 points, and give you 9 rebounds, or 25 points and 9 rebounds. And Kawhi has over time gotten better with his passing, and now he's averaging about 5 assists a game himself, which has been really impressive, adding that to his game, to his repertoire. But, I just feel like when you're playing with somebody who understands you're the better player and they don't try to step over you, I feel like that's what builds chemistry more. And I feel like him and Paul George already have that type of understanding. And that right there can unify the team in ways that, other situations might not, for other teams. It's almost like with LeBron and AD. AD understands LeBron is going to get all the credit when they win. But AD understands the team runs through him, and so does LeBron. LeBron understands that. LeBron even said a couple years ago, this is AD's team. He's even said it himself, because he know that he's getting older and he know that he can't really carry a team like that. So it's AD's team, but LeBron gets all the credit because he's LeBron, and Anthony Davis is okay with that. And that's what I'm trying to say. When you have secondary players who understand what the situation is and play their role, how they play it to perfection, that's the type of chemistry type duo you want to have, because you can build off of that. So my thing is this. I don't feel like they should trade Paul George, like I said, unless they get a Damian Lillard, somebody like that, because you look at Damian Lillard, to me, I know I say a lot of superstars I don't feel like would fit with Kawhi Leonard, but I feel like Damian Lillard's so hungry to win. He's so hungry to, make it to a finals or something. He's so hungry to get there. I feel like he'll do whatever he has to do to win. And if it's taking a back seat to Kawhi Leonard for any amount of reason, I think Damian Lillard would do it, just like I think Paul George does it. So to me, if they did trade Paul George, it would have to be for Damian Lillard. I don't really see any other player. I don't care about no other player on the Nuggets, and which the reports are saying, their Nuggets are looking for a trade or anything like that. And I think I was hearing something about the Lakers too, but it's kind of like, well, who would the Lakers give up, or who would the Clippers take in replace of Paul George on the Lakers? I don't see anybody, because if it's not LeBron or Anthony Davis, what's the point? You know what I'm saying? It's not even worth the listen of the trade. We don't need. I wouldn't say the Clippers would want Kyle Kuzma, even though I've always kind of liked Kyle Kuzma, but he's just very inconsistent. So you don't need that. You need somebody who's more of a consistent scorer, and what they bring. Now I know Paul George could be inconsistent at times, but he is a superstar caliber type player compared to any other player on the Lakers, I'll say. It's, especially like a Kyle Kuzma. So my point is, it doesn't make sense for any trades. I really don't want to hear anything about any trades with Paul George or see any news or anything about these other teams. Let it all just be talk and let it not come to reality. Because like I said, reality is they need Paul George. They need Kawhi back. They need this whole team back together, because what they did this season right here proved that they're one of the elite teams in the West. What they did this season proved that they are contenders instead of pretenders. So with that being said, they got to find a way to bring the band back together. Or, like I said, if they are going to make any trades or anything like that, it better be for somebody equivalent to who you're trading for. That's my theory on it. That's what I see. That's how I think it should be. And that's how I think it needs to go, just in my reference and how I see it. So, hey, that's my take on the situation there. That's how I see the situation. Now, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers made a trade for Paul George, because nothing surprised me in the NBA, and it shouldn't surprise you either. The NBA is filled with drama and different surprises and different things. I mean, you remember when Kawhi Leonard signed to the Clippers, who saw that coming? And when everybody in the world believed and knew that it was written that Kawhi was going to sign with the Lakers, and he ended up signing with the LA Clippers and got Paul George with them. So when things that happen in the NBA can't surprise you, and they shouldn't, because you never know. You just never know. But I'm going to say this. They need to keep Paul George. They need to find a way to re-sign Kawhi. And they need to find a way to keep Reggie Jackson. And I like Marcus Morris. I like, other players on the team, but I feel like they got to do whatever they need to do to keep Reggie Jackson, because the consistency he showed in the playoffs when Marcus Morris wasn't showing consistency, when he had games where he was a non-factor, Reggie Jackson really came alive and showed the world in the playoffs he really can ball. And he's really a consistent third scorer for that team. Now, a lot of people may look at it differently, may disagree, but I'm telling you, to me, Reggie Jackson showed more value than Marcus Morris did. Marcus Morris got the $64 million contract, but they should have gave that to Reggie Jackson. Now, I know they didn't know whether Reggie Jackson can ball the way he did or not, but now you're seeing it. So, you need to keep the guy that's more consistent, the guy who's going to give you more of an opportunity to win. Because I'm telling you, Reggie Jackson was more valuable than Marcus Morris in these playoffs. Marcus Morris had his games, he had his moments, and I'm not going to take that from him, because he did have some big games. And, somehow when he plays really good, they play really good. They usually win when Marcus Morris plays pretty good. But my thing is, they wouldn't have won some of them games without Reggie Jackson. It's just no way. Reggie Jackson was their hero a lot of times, and their unsung hero when Kawhi and PG was putting up a lot of points. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I don't know. They just have to find a way to keep the band together. And like I said, if they do make any trades or anything like that, it better be for somebody equivalent or better than what the Clippers had. Like, if you let go of Reggie Jackson, you better replace Reggie Jackson with somebody who can do everything he can do, plus more. Like a Spencer Dinwiddie or somebody like that. I mean, you got to replace people with the equivalency of what the player that you prior had was. You cannot replace them with a player that's anywhere under that, because you're just going backwards. So that's my take on everything as far as I, wanted to talk about the situation in regards to Paul George. But hey, let me know what you think. Should they trade him? Should they keep him? Should the Clippers think into looking into other options? Let me know what you think in the comment section, like always, and we'll engage and we'll talk about it. And Cali out.